I'd like to start by just welcoming everyone to Eastview. We're totally very excited about just the fact that you're here, that you're celebrating education with us where we are right now, where we've been in the past, and where we're going in the future. So on behalf of everyone at Eastview, thank you very much for making the time to be with us today. At this point, I'd like to turn over the microphone to E.J. Quandavins. He's our Cultures and Traditions instructor for an introduction and starting of our today's program.
Bonjour de Maganaduk, Gani Nanake Kishi Dishnikas, Mang to them, Wabidanga Dojiba, Toronto Nedoche. It's really important that we open the ceremony or the welcoming of all you to Eastview Public School in a good way. My role at Eastview is the Culture and Traditions instructor, and I want to be able to open up this morning's session with our opening welcoming song and also our acknowledgement. And before we do that, we always acknowledge our place in the physical world and our connection to the spiritual world through our smudging and how we prepare our thoughts and our minds to what it is that we're about to take in a good way. We always open up our opening ceremonies with a welcoming song, and this is a song that I had given to the school of Eastview and all the students. It's called the Thunderbird Song, and it actually translates to "Let us go into our lodges as we go into the let's go into our lodges as the Thunderbirds will see us." One of the things that we need to share with all of you is our land acknowledgement. And what really is that? When we talk about it, we hear the words that we hear in the TDSB, and when we make the announcements for the acknowledgements. Traditionally, Indigenous people were people who we didn't own the land. We don't own the land. We're merely just instruments borrowing from the land. And so although there were a number of different tribes and nations that came to the shores of this region, we never had possession of the land. And so it's important that we acknowledge that our relationship to the land is for all to enjoy, and to not place any type of ownership or any type of stake to the land. But in today's context, we have a number of Indigenous people that have congregated in this region, and the people of the Wendat Nation. And many people think that the Wendat Nation are non-existent people, but they very much are alive and well in this region. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy, they too once, and still do, reside in this territory. So we acknowledge those people. The Mississaugas of Shkugag, Mississaugas of New Credit rather, they are people who continue to live in this region. And so when we hear this acknowledgement in the schools, it's important that we don't just listen to it. It's just not a script. You really have to understand the meaning behind it, because the people that continue to live in this region, it's crucial that you acknowledge their place in society. You acknowledge the traditional territories that we are sitting on to this day. So I leave you with that, and I say Kachimigwich, thank you for coming into Eastview Public School, and it gives me great pleasure to have you guys here with us. Miigwech.
Miigwech EJ, and from all of us, thank you very much. When we come in and we live in this city, quite often it seems to be fast. Every time I hear you speak, every time we get to hear that conversation, we get to slow down and reflect on who we are and where we come and again where we're going. So thank you very much for that. Miigwech. At this point, I'd like to invite Jennifer Arp, the Vice Chair, to the podium.
Thank you and good morning. On behalf of the Toronto District School Board, I would like to extend a warm welcome to Ministers Naidoo-Harris and Ministers Hunter and Executive Superintendent Sandy Spropoulos. Thank you so much for joining us here this morning. Eastview is a brilliant and diverse institution with an inclusive environment that exposes our students to many cultures, languages, and people. Specifically, this school continues to be a leader in developing First Nations, Métis, and Inuit education programs. Here, students can participate in Ojibwe classes, programs focused on cultures and traditions, and experience Indigenous culture firsthand in the lodge. For this and many other reasons, Eastview is a fitting place for this morning's announcement. Before we move along, I would like to acknowledge and thank our Indigenous instructors for being here with us today, EJ Quebines, Jarvis Natty, and Christina Saunders. Also, thank you Principal Kenneth Morden and Vice Principal Sarah Johnson and all of the other staff here at Eastview for having us today. On behalf of the board, thank you for all you do for our students. And now, I would like to introduce the Minister of Education, Indira Naidoo-Harris.
Miigwech, thank you, Jennifer, for that lovely introduction. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour, bonjour, Annie. I cannot tell you how pleased I am to be here with you all this morning. I, too, would like to start by acknowledging that we are on the land of many Indigenous peoples dating back countless generations, and to show my respect for their contributions in building what we now know as Ontario and Canada. I want to start by thanking, of course, Cultures and Traditions instructor E.J. Quandabens for the land acknowledgement and for starting us off in such a good way. Your words were thoughtful, they were inspiring, and they absolutely put us on a good path. And so thank you so much for that. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I visited the First Nations School of Toronto, and what an experience that was. It was an amazing school, a place where culture, tradition, and learning all came together to give young people a strong start in life. And today, here I am at Eastview. I think I'm pretty lucky, actually. I get to do some great things. Today, I once again got to visit and see firsthand a school that focuses on empowering students with a strong sense of culture, identity, and history. A place that gives kids a strong sense of who they are and where they come from, and puts them on a path to success. So I'd like to begin by saying thank you. Thank you to Principal Morden, Vice Principal Johnson, Vice Chair Arp, and all the educators, staff, and students who are here at Eastview Public School for creating this very special place of learning, and of course for your warm welcome. You know, from the moment I walked in through the doors, I was greeted by all those young people standing there and ready to go. And then it wasn't just a matter of meeting them and getting a chance to have a quick chat with them, but it was also looking down the hallway and seeing all the artwork and all the thoughtful pieces that were up on the walls that really seemed to reflect what this school is all about in the community and show the rich history, culture, and tradition of Indigenous peoples. And I have to say that those feelings and those thoughts seem to be echoing down that hallway with the artwork that I saw there. So I'm also very excited to be here today to learn about the Ojibwe language class that's taught here. I'm looking forward to that. And I want to recognize, of course, while I'm here, some of the special guests that are joining us here today. So certainly Julia Candlish, Director of Education, Chiefs of Ontario, Ontario Federation of Indigenous Friendship Centres, Greg Correll. Also here, of course, is my very good friend and colleague, the Honourable Mitzie Hunter, Minister of Advanced Education and Skills Development, but I think very importantly for all of you, your local MPP at Scarborough-Guildwood. But you know what? We know her as having a strong voice and having a strong voice at the cabinet table. But I want you all to know that she has an extremely strong voice for her community and make sure that she reflects that in all the decisions we make. So I want you to know you're very lucky. I think you are. 10 years ago, the Indigenous Education Strategy was launched to improve learning outcomes for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students of Ontario. And together, we've come a long way. Together, we've strengthened the bonds between First Nations, Métis, Inuit partners, school boards, communities, parents, students, and the ministry. And together, we're creating a strong path to success for Indigenous students. So important. As a government, with the signing of the 2015 political accord, we have established a new nation-to-nation relationship between Ontario and First Nations. This is key and this is vital because what it does is build bridges. We have built important partnership agreements between Ontario and the Tungasug-Vingat Inuit, the Métis Nation of Ontario. I hope I pronounced that properly. I'll try again later. The Anishinaabe-Aski Nation, the Association of Iroquois and Allied Indians to support improved educational outcomes for all Indigenous students. And last year, we reached another milestone with the signing of the Master Education Agreement, a real milestone. When it comes into effect in April, the Anishinaabe education system will give more opportunities to Anishinaabe students to learn in an education system that reflects their culture, that reflects their identity, and that gives them a voice. And at the school board level, Indigenous education leads and advisory councils are engaging with their communities to build on work to support Indigenous learners in their schools and support all learners in understanding the contributions of Indigenous peoples. As we look ahead to the next stage of this journey, these relationships are the bridges that will carry us forward. And these relationships are what will sustain our work together. Together, in the spirit of reconciliation, we've also taken important steps towards system-wide changes, including targeted funding for Indigenous education programs and services, support for professional development for educators and staff to help them better meet the needs of Indigenous students, working with residential school survivors, First Nation, Métis, and Inuit partners, as well as education partners to make the curriculum more inclusive of Indigenous perspectives. Why? Because we know students are more engaged in their learning when they see their cultures reflected in the curriculum, their communities reflected in the curriculum, their histories reflected in the curriculum. And we know students perform better when they see themselves reflected in the classroom. And in Ontario, we recognize that language is the foundation of culture. It gives voice to the needs and successes of people. And we know that Indigenous peoples have a strong tradition of oral histories and cultures, and this is deserving of respect, understanding, and support. To quote Senator Murray Sinclair, "If we are to heal, we must return to our spirituality. We must begin to once again speak our language and to hold our ceremonies." These are powerful words. At the Indigenous Languages Symposium we hosted recently with 6 language families, the Anishinaabeg, the Ongwe-Howe, the Mushkegowuk, Lenape, and Inuktitut, and Michif, we heard about the urgency and need to support Indigenous language revitalization in Ontario. It was a call to action to save the languages of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities. I believe that we are really at a very important point in our history as a community, a province, and a country. We have the ability right now to do something that will be remembered for years to come, to save languages and to ensure that they continue and that they live and that they breathe and that they become strong. So today, I have the pleasure of announcing that Ontario is providing $10 million over 2 years through the Indigenous Languages Fund to support, promote, and revitalize Indigenous languages in schools, funding to keep languages vital and alive. The province will also provide $750,000 over 2 years to Indigenous organizations to support community engagement and long-term planning for Indigenous languages. So important. And it's so great to see that all 40 of these projects are being led by Indigenous communities and organizations and will support language learning in all 6 language families from the early years right through to post-secondary years in communities across the province. These initiatives mark another step forward in our work together to develop a strategy for the revitalization of Indigenous languages. Now, no question, there is more work to do, and we will walk together on our shared journey towards reconciliation and towards doing that work. But together, we will effect positive change. Change in schools across the province, change in the lives of teachers, students, and communities, and change in our future. So I want to thank you. Thank you for your dedication, your hard work and commitment. I look forward to continuing on this important journey with you, a journey that will put Indigenous children on a strong path to a strong future, to success. Miigwech, merci, thank you. And I'd now like to invite my very good friend and colleague, Minister Hunter, your MPP, to speak more on the post-secondary supports our government has in place. So Minister Hunter, come on up.
Well, good morning, everyone. Bonjour, bonjour. It's so fantastic to be here. And, you know, as I was walking in the school, there was like this excitement. I could really feel it. And the student ambassadors, of course, as they always do, they welcomed me. And, you know, I saw some of the younger grades and they were saying hello. And there was all this excitement. I'm like, they're happy we're here. No, they have 2 trips today. One to the Science Center and one to see a movie. I think it's A Wrinkle in Time. So there you go. Friends, it is wonderful to be here and to welcome you to my community here in Scarborough-Guildwood. EJ, miigwech for the wonderful way that you started us off today. It really was very thoughtful and thank you and very uplifting. Principal Ken, it's great to be here at Eastview, and you know, whenever I'm at Eastview, and Vice Principal, where is she? Yes. Whenever I'm at Eastview, I am always warmly welcomed in this school on these grounds. And last summer, it was, I believe, my third powwow that I've attended. And you know, I was invited to the dancing circle, so I joined the dancing circle, and I was going around, and I felt really good. You know, I was getting the flow. And one of the students came up to me. It was just a magical moment, and she put her jingle shawl around me. And I have to tell you that in that moment, it was just fantastic. I felt lighter, I felt freer, and just joined the whole community as we did that dance together. So just a very special community is here for Minister for this announcement. It's such a worthy place, and I'm very thankful that you chose Eastview and Scarborough-Guildwood for this very important province-wide announcement. Thank you so much to the TDSB for your leadership, and I know that the broader team is here with you, Jennifer and Sandy, and that's really important as well. This board is really focused on the learning outcomes for students, and I'm just so pleased to welcome you here today. So my focus in today's announcement is really to talk about education at the post-secondary level, because, you know, Indira and I represent the learning ministries, and we've always worked so closely together, and we continue to do so. And as she said, this is about making sure Indigenous students are successful, and that's exactly what our government is focused on, and that we want to see those outcomes. So to build a province that is more fair and equal and just for everyone. So we want to make sure that the pathways to education is open. And that is why our government made colleges and university tuition free for those who need it. I want to tell you a little bit about how that is going. So this year, 225,000 students are going to school for free as a result of this program. And that's hundreds of thousands of people who thought that college or university wasn't for them, who thought that there were too many barriers. Indigenous families tell us that they don't trust Ontario's education system, that they don't see themselves reflected in the culture and in the curriculum in our schools, and that the cost of going to college or university are just too high. How can we hope to move towards reconciliation if we stick with this status quo? It has to change. We need to do better. So, as Minister Naidoo-Harris has said, we're making sure Indigenous students have more opportunities to learn in a way that reflects their culture and identity. Very much what I see here at Eastview. I remember how amazed I was when the lodge, which is housed inside these walls, but which is so effective in the authenticity in which it brings forward Indigenous cultures. And I'm so pleased to share with you that in just 1 year of free tuition, we've seen a 34% increase in the number of Indigenous learners accessing aid to go to college and university. That's huge. And we're making that financial aid more accessible by not counting federal support like PSSSP when figuring out the cost of tuition. Because OSAP and Ontario are here for Indigenous learners. All of this means that more Indigenous learners and young people are seeing college and university as a legitimate path towards employment and training and that brighter future. But for those who don't, that's okay. Reconciliation is in part about understanding that one solution won't fit for everyone. So, in addition to introducing free tuition, we also passed legislation to officially recognize Indigenous institutes as a pillar of our post-secondary system in December. And we're providing funding so that these centers of learning can offer degrees and diplomas in an environment that is close to Indigenous communities and reflects their identity and culture. I want to thank the Indigenous educators, training providers, and many others who are open to working with us to close the education gap, making sure every Indigenous and non-Indigenous person can access the training that they need to succeed. I know we have more work to do, and I know you're all working very hard to do just that, to make sure that we are on the right path. And I am confident that together we are. And Minister Naidoo-Harris and I are now happy to talk more about that.
Are there any questions? Okay, I think we'll move forward with the photograph then. I think there's an official photograph.
Yes, let's do that.
An
Lots to
exciting day, and
celebrate.
we're very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci,
Yes.
miigwech.